Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Paths Uncovered, a podcast where we get to go through all the untraditional pathways that people have taken into technology and kind of make it a little bit of a more even playing field of kind of getting your way into the field, especially if you've had a really cool and unmitigated career trajectory before this. And today's guest, I think, kind of definitely fits the bill, right on track with the multiple different careers she's had in the whole journey that she's taken to get to here. So I've got Selena Small with me.
Hi, I'm Selena. I'm really excited to be here today sharing my journey. I'm currently a head of delivery at Fresho in Melbourne. And I'm also a professional kickboxer, currently holding the Victorian state title for the WMC 53.5 kilo bantamweight.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that part. That is amazing. Congratulations. I love this. What a great start. I love it. This is just going to be absolutely perfect. And I think the one that just got released recently enough was Tess Guard, the episode. And so this was where I was telling people, I was at Women Who Code, and I was like, anybody who wants to share their journey. And I'm sure there's so many people who've had kind of untraditional pathways. And so, Selena was just like, yep, it's me. Hi, hello, let's do this. I was like, yes, more people like this, please. Makes my life so much easier. So it was so good to hear from you. And this is going to be such a good conversation, I think.
Well, I hope so.
Absolutely no pressure, no, but I think it'll just be great fun to have. So look, let's dive in and take me back to kind of high school times, college. What were the decisions? What were the kind of thought process? Where did you think everything was going to go back then?
Wow, that's a really good question. Taking me back a few years now. I definitely didn't think I was going to be making it into software engineering, and I certainly didn't think I was going to be a kickboxer either. Neither of those things were on the cards. I was really into graphic design, and I wanted to be an architect. So I moved away from my family after high school in New Zealand to study to be an architect at uni. Did that for about 2 years and decided it really wasn't for me.
I felt like I recently had someone else who kind of went through that path of architecture as well. And it's the same story. I was like, I've got a friend in college who did the exact same thing. Right? I think she did about 2 years as well. And she was like, nah, this isn't it. This is not for me.
Yeah, studying architecture and actually designing stuff is really two different things. So I quickly decided, no, I don't like studying other people's work. If I do this is, I want to be drawing stuff and coming up with my own ideas.
So yeah, so you decided to leave. Did you leave the degree 2 years in? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right.
So what was happening then?
So, well, my family does well, okay, but they don't do well enough to pay for me to go to uni. So the whole time I was at uni, I kind of juggled a lot of jobs in hospitality, working in bars and restaurants and nightclubs. I had, various different roles as a bartender. I was a cook, like a brunch cook at a cafe. I think I picked up extra shifts over summer somewhere else, just in another local bar, and trying to fit it all in with uni as well. Actually, anyone who studied architecture knows it's a really full-on degree, really intense. So it can be quite hard to fit anything on top of that if you want to do really well at it. And so I did tried my hardest. But yeah, I suppose when I left my degree, the only kind of thing I had to fall back on was all my hospitality experience and my connections in the bars and things like that. And so I kind of thought, well, I don't really know what I want to do. But what I could do is I could work full time and make a whole lot more money and not have a debt. And at the same time, what I could do is just go to a local polytechnic where the course isn't as intense as uni. And I ended up spending the next, I think, two years maybe, working full time at a pretty good bar restaurant in Wellington, and studying business management and accounting, because I kind of figured that, well, I don't know what I want to do, but business management and accounting sounds like something that I could probably apply to anything in the future.
Yeah,
it sounds pretty open-ended.
Oh, I love that. And I mean, it's like, it's just become such an assumption, isn't it? It's just like you go to school, you'll go to college, you'll finish college, and you'll have your life, and that's the end of that. And it's interesting when it's like, well, actually, that isn't really how it works. And I mean, it's not for everyone. And like, as in, there was definitely times in college where I was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? What is going on? Like, and I think everyone kind of goes through that. But I mean, I think it's a whole different level of kind of being like, actually, no, this is definitely not for me, and this is a different step I need to take. And I think it's just, I mean, there's a whole different level of courage that takes into account of just like, no, I'm gonna make my own path here. I'm gonna change this around. Like, especially when there's so much kind of things happening everywhere, like the dead part. I'm like, it's important. Like, I mean, it has to be taken care of at that time.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't know until you start doing something whether you like it or not.
Oh, it's so important.
You know, you can't decide when you're 6.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I picked what I wanted to do when I was 17. I'm sorry, I could barely like figure out what I was gonna do like the next day, let alone the rest of my life, like supposedly. Like, it's bizarre, like the little level of pressure of like, no, you'll make the right decision and I'm sure it'll work itself out. And you're like, will it? Do we know?
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, a lot to put on someone who's 16 to spend the next 60 years of your life.
I mean, I'm
doing
glad
something.
that that's not the case anymore. At least we can have like different things. They're like, actually, let's pivot this. Let's make this something else. But like the whole point of like going back to kind of where your experiences, right? It's like, let's make the most of everything I can do at the moment and still make it like going to college on the side. Like, that takes dedication and like fair play to yourself. Like, working full time on top of that is just so much effort. So you've now gotten the business management and accounting stuff in under the belt. You've been working for a good little bit of time. What's happening next?
So at this point, I think I've taken on a new role. So I'd worked in it just as a cocktail waitress in this great bar restaurant for a long time. But I've kind of always been ambitious, and so you kind of want to get your way to the top of, you know, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And in that particular bar restaurant, like, there was a lot of experience and there was no opportunity for me to become the general manager there or something. And so I'd ended up moving to a nightclub. Well, not really a nightclub, a late night bar, like a really drinking bar, and taken over the position there as general manager. So I was running this tiny little late night bar, probably one of the busiest places on Courtney Place in Wellington. We were open till 6 a.m, 5 nights a week. It was hectic. There was no dance floor. People didn't go there to dance. They went there to drink.
Yeah.
And so we were the place that after all the other bars were closed, their staff came to our place. So we were crazy busy. We were packed all night. It was insane. It was definitely a wild ride. Like, I was in my early 20s. My job was basically get drunk, get these people drunk, party, have a great time. And it was fucking awesome.
I mean, yeah, sounds great. And I think I compare this to Ireland, where like I think the latest bars were allowed open till was 2. And I mean, I think there was one bar in the country that opened any later than that. Like, God, that sounds, it sounds hectic, sounds very accurate.
Yeah, for sure. I ended up doing that for about 4 years. So running that place.
Oh, wow. I don't know.
Nobody thought, nobody thought I could do it. Would have lasted that long. And I'm not surprised, actually, because it is a very, like, it takes the toll. Like, it's actually a kind of a whole lifestyle change to work those hours. And to deal actually constantly, you only deal with drunk people. And so by the time I finished working there, I hated people. I just couldn't stand anyone, didn't want to talk to anyone, I just hated people because I'd only been dealing with these drunk, annoying, arrogant, people.
I mean, you were just faced with that one specific thing for so long. You're like, oh my God, get me away from everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. And there's no life outside of that because you're working those hours. So you have to sleep all day to make up for it. And so when normal people are awake, you're asleep. So there's no kind of crossover interaction. Don't get me wrong, there was some lovely, some amazing people, but just the majority were, you come away with this mentality thinking like, that's everyone in the world is like that.
God, that, yeah. I mean, and it's hard. Sorry, it's not hard to see. God, words are messing my brain up a little bit here, but it's not hard to see why that's the case, like why that mindset was setting in as well, right? Like it, as you said, like it's just the whole lifestyle change. So like, how was it coming out of that after 4 years of it?
Well, that was probably the turning point in my life, to be honest. I spent 4 years doing that, and by that stage, I was kind of thinking, well, what else could I possibly do? You know, I don't have any other skills. Yeah, I have this diploma, but who really cares about that? And I don't have any other kind of experience. And so I did try to look around, but I also still just didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so luckily the guy that I worked for, the guy that owned the place, he had his finger in quite a few pies. And so he had another restaurant opening up, and I ended up working there for him. So I was the operations manager for that restaurant, which meant I could work daytime hours. But because it's not like office 9 till 5, it was a little bit flexible. So I could work like 10 till 7, which was, you know, that was massive because you know, coming from like having the hours of like 10 p.m. till 7 a.m., there's no way you can flip that around from 9 to 5. So it took quite a long time actually to be able to even wake up at 10.
I mean, yeah, God, that's a weird thought, but yeah, I get that.
Yeah, well, more importantly, it took me a long time to even be able to get to sleep before 2 a.m.
Oh my God, yeah. It's like a full out shift in like a whole lifestyle. Like, yeah, I mean, like I'm saying the same thing that you've already said, but like it really is just wild how big of a change that actually is.
Oh yeah, I think people are surprised by it, but it's really hard to fully understand unless you've done it. You know?
Like I think I've seen my mom, like, so my mom's a nurse, like I've seen her do night shifts and stuff. Like the whole thing of like, oh, we gotta be quiet during the day because we can't make any noises. And I mean, it's fine. But like even then, like as in the first few days are just terrible because like it's trying to get into that, right? So like if she works a week of night shifts, like the first few days, she'd be up and awake during the day hours anyway, and then is exhausted. And it's just like this weird cycle of trying to get into it. And then by the time she does, it's over. But this was like such a sustained level of it that I'm just, oh my God, I don't know how like I can't understand how hard it would have been to come out of that.
Yeah, it was different. Certainly, you know, my fuel was you know, vodka and fries.
it'll get the job done for that day.
Yeah, it was actually really quite bad. Thinking back to it, you know, like I was drinking a lot at that time, and I know everyone drinks in their early 20s, but this is just insane. Like I actually had to drink to get through my shift by the end of it, and I was probably drinking, you know, 2 liters of straight spirits a week on average. So where impossible, just shots. I'd probably 2 or 3 in the morning, that's when I'd have my dinner break, and I'd just go across the road and get some fries. And I actually, it was pretty bad. Like I actually ended up getting so, not really skinny, but just so unhealthy that, you know, on the weekend I'd go for a walk 20 minutes down the street and I would have to go home and have a nap because I was so exhausted. Like I just couldn't keep walking.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was a terrible lifestyle. Yeah. Started out fun, ended up not.
Yeah, fair. So like now you're at the restaurant. You're now at the restaurant where it's back into the daylight living hours. Like the change has been tough, but we're getting through it. So how's that whole experience? Because now you've kind of stepped up into operations management as well. So maybe is the degree coming in handy as well?
Yeah, so that's like I said, this is kind of where everything shifted like 100%. This is where I had a little bit of like clarity. I could start thinking straight, and I could start thinking about what do I really want to be doing, because I really don't want to work in hospitality forever. At this point, like I quit my job as general manager at the nightclub. I broke up with my boyfriend, kicked him out of the apartment. I, you know, like all of these things that have been going on for the last 4 years that had become so toxic, I kind of just kicked all these habits. I I didn't completely stop drinking, but I definitely cut down a lot. And yeah, I went to go work as operations manager in this restaurant. And so, yeah, it was a little bit helpful having the degree, I suppose, but I think probably more helpful was just the experience that I'd already had as a general manager somewhere else. And just having been in the restaurants and hospitality scene for so long, that was a huge benefit. But this is probably the time where we can start talking about two things, which are really exciting. One, this is where I got into day work, so I could start kickboxing. And number two, this is where I actually started learning to code.
Oh, okay. So, right, how do we break? Which one do we want to dive into first? So maybe let's talk about the kickboxing, right? Because we're just coming out of the lifestyle stuff of like, it was really unhealthy and you're kind of not in the best place you could be. So was that kind of a case of like, this will let me back into a healthier lifestyle? Is that where kickboxing started, or how did that kind of all start up?
Yeah, so, well, kickboxing's a funny, so I suppose we don't, going back to high school, I always played a lot of sports, right? I was the captain of my football team. I was the captain of the hockey team. I was the swimming champion. You know, I did a lot of sports when I was a kid. And coming to uni, it was really full on with the architecture, like I said, and there's not really a lot of time for anything else. And I needed to work. So, you know, sports kind of went out the window. But at that time, that's actually when I started looking for other opportunities for some kind of sports. Sports teams kind of means you need to commit to other people. And so I thought I'd go, you know, do something solo. And that's where I first kind of heard about kickboxing and thought, oh, maybe that would be really cool to do for fitness. But like I said, you know, one thing led to another. There just, you know, over these last 4-6 years, there just wasn't time to fit it in. You know, I mean, I'm either studying and working, or I'm working these crazy hours. And so, flipping my life around after minibar, I kind of thought, well, you know what? I wanted to give kickboxing a go. Maybe I could give it a go now. And so, like I said, I'd gotten pretty sick towards the end of my time at minibar. And so I wasn't very confident to go into the gym and try it out. I thought, well, I might make an absolute fool of myself. I might be really unco. And I'm also really unfit. But, you know, if I try to work on one of those things, maybe I won't feel as bad if it doesn't work out. So I was really determined to go and try it out. And I started running. The first day I went for a run, it was like this 1 hour run uphill, up Mount Victoria. And probably, I don't know, 15 minutes in, I had to stop and start walking. But it was a one-way track, so you had to go one way to get back, and you had to finish it. And I thought, well, shit. You know, the next day I was like aching, I was in agony, and I had to take a day off. And then I thought, well, do you know what? If I can run for an hour non-stop, I think I'll feel fit enough and confident enough to go and walk into that gym. And so it took me about 6 weeks until I could run every day for 1 hour non-stop before I felt confident enough. And I was like, all right, let's just book in a PT. Let's go try it. See what happens. What's the worst that could happen? At least I'm fit, even if I'm unco.
I like that. It was just like the little steps and like the little things of like, let me just do this one thing and I'll do this. And then if I do this, I'll do that. I like that like methodical kind of way of doing it. And I mean, I've been to Mount Victoria and I'm like, I do not know how you did this. Me trying to get back into my own fitness after the lockdowns have been the thing. I'm like, oh, wow. But maybe I should just do like, I'll just run for 30 minutes. And if I can do that, I can get through this.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good way of doing it. So you've obviously gotten very fit again. Like I'm like thinking back to Mount Victoria. I mean, I drove up that. I didn't even walk up that. And I'm like, okay, wow. But so you've gone into the gym and like you're getting into the kickboxing things. And how's that going then? Like how is kind of diving into this whole, I mean, I guess I'm like a professional athlete world, I guess.
Yeah, well, I started kickboxing. So I went to a gym called Jai in Wellington, New Zealand, and they they're not like a dirty, grungy, like fighters gym. They're really focused on like women. They actually have a lot more women than men, even there. And they do mainly fitness classes too. So they do have some fighters as well, but they're mainly focused on women who want to get fit. And so that's kind of nice because it means it's not super intimidating.
Yep.
And the other cool thing about it is that they, at the time, I don't know if it's still the case, but at the time they only had Thai trainers. So they were very much into Muay Thai, which is a Thai style of kickboxing. And at the time I had no idea one from the other. I didn't know there were all these variations. I didn't know a lot of things. But what I was actually learning was Muay Thai. So that was kind of cool because yeah, it was just a really nice, welcoming kind of environment. There was sort of social groups as well. So there were a lot of people, you know, who were kind of not new, but they're just more like doing it for fitness and for fun. And they'd get together on the weekend and go hang out or go have drinks or go celebrate someone's birthday or whatever. And so it was really cool to just be part of this social group. And some of those people I'm still friends with now, even though, you know, we're not living in the same city or the same country anymore. And it's really cool. Like we kind of made these lifelong friendships, I suppose. But yeah, I kind of started out just for the fitness. And I felt like, you know, I went to this PT session for the first time because I didn't want to feel like an idiot in front of the class.
Yep.
And they were so nice and they were so friendly and they were so encouraging as well. It just made me want to go back. And I think probably 3 months in, they were like, they started talking about fighting. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just have one fight, see what it's like. You know, a lot of people do that. And so, yeah, it was probably would have been at least a year before I ended up getting in the ring for the first time. But yeah, it was just so much fun. I just loved it so much. I was literally there 6 days a week, every day for a class.
Oh, it's so cool. I love this. I mean, especially kind of starting, it's so interesting. I think these kind of things of just like, all it took was just a good supportive community around it to be like, no, this is actually something where I want to be, and I want to be doing this. Because yeah, like, I mean, God, these lockdowns really are just killing me a little bit. Like, I mean, I'd gotten into such a good routine right before the original lockdowns happened. I think it was like, so I was in Wellington right before lockdowns happened and stuff. And I was in such a good place. And then boom, everything's shut down. All of 2020, I like literally didn't do anything. I just couldn't get myself to do it. And then like 2021, I was like, okay, no, I mean, we've got to get back out. That's okay. We're going to do this. I joined a new gym and they're like the nicest people there. And I mean, I was getting so fit again. And then now we're back in this lockdown. And I'm like, oh, how many times can I just be like, let's just start? I guess we'll do it one more time, but I hope we'll be fine. But yeah, like it just goes such a long way for those kind of things of like, I used to hate going to the gym where I'm like, oh my God, there's so many people here and I look like an idiot. Like it's always that thought. And it's like, the community part really gets me. And I'm like, it makes such a difference. But it's okay, this has kind of happened over a year and a half kind of a time frame as you've kind of gotten towards the fighting bit. And you said at the same time, you were kind of starting to learn to code as well. So how is that going while you're learning how to like literally just fight and kick people? This is great.
Yeah, so they did start, it's like within months of each other, I kind of started. But yeah, the software thing. So one of the really good regulars for the early part of the evening at the late night bar that I'd been running, mini bar, his name is Tom Cully. He would come in the early part of the evening. So he wasn't one of those, you know, horrible drunk people that I had to deal with at the end of the night. And we'd quite often, you know, like have a chat while he's having a drink in the evening or whatever. And after I stopped working at minibar, or towards the end, I mentioned to him that I was planning to leave, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he said, well, what interests you? And I said, you know, I'd been looking at various courses online to see if I could get some inspiration, you know, try to figure out, like, is there a course that maybe sounds interesting? Like, what direction do I want to take? And I think the most interesting thing that I could find, which still wasn't really that interesting to me, but it seemed the most interesting at the time, was I think a course in web development. Mm-hmm. Web development, I think so. Yeah.
You could tell how interesting it was. It was like something that was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't that appealing. But anyway, I mentioned that to him. And Tom was actually, he's a software architect. He's 20 years in the game, like since he was young. And he's really passionate about mentoring and teaching other people. And so out of this conversation, kind of just one thing led to another. And before I knew it, he was showing me how to write some code.
Yep.
He soon after that, he actually ended up moving over to Sydney, which is, unfortunate, you would think, right? But no. So we stayed in contact, and he would send me all these like problems to go and research. And I was just so excited to go and research these problems. And I'm talking like, go and find out what von Neumann architecture is and explain it to me. Go and figure out how to translate hex into binary and back the other way. Go and find out what a linked list is and explain it to me. How do you traverse a binary tree efficiently? All these kind of things. And I had, I'd never knew anything about software engineering. I didn't know, I'm probably like in my mid-20s here. I didn't even know, you could open a terminal and essentially talk to your computer. This was just like, holy shit, I didn't know any of this was real. And so, I'd go and research these problems and send him back the answer. And he'd evaluate them and tell me that, they're good or bad or whatever. And then eventually we started writing some Assembly 68K. So I built a dice game in Assembly 68K. He basically told me, go get yourself a Mac, whatever it takes, put it on tick, doesn't matter, just get a Mac Air, cheap one, who cares? It'll be expensive now, but it'll pay off in the long run. And whatever it was, like blind faith, who knows? I went off and did it.
Yep.
I think that's probably most of my savings at that point. Gone into this computer. And I think I hadn't even owned a computer in like 6 years. So, it was all brand new, exciting. Eventually we built this dice game, and then he taught me some C. So we built a chat server in C. At some point he came back to Wellington and we got together again and kind of advanced to Ruby.
Yep.
So we did a little bit of basic Ruby. And I think it must be, I don't know, maybe a year later or a year and a half later that he introduced me to some people that he knew, and I ended up getting my first job part-time contracting as a junior software engineer.
I love this. And I love how, and this is where like mentoring and actual like sponsorship of people comes in. So it's so important. And I think, like, it was a little bit of his time on the side, but like he basically taught you like what a uni degree would teach in a sense of, right? Like you were properly learning, and it's so much better when you're just kind of doing it for yourself and you're just like, yep, I'm interested, I'll just go figure this out, than being like, here's an assignment, go do it. Which is, it has its own merits where it's needed, but like I definitely didn't find that I learned a lot more, well, barely anything, when I was like, okay, I just have to finish this piece of paper to get a mark, to get a piece of paper at the end of it. But that is so good to hear. And so like, and this is literally just lining itself up now, isn't it? Like this took about a year and a half. The kickboxing was taking about a year and a half to get to the same level of like getting your first job and at the same time going in properly fighting. This is so cool to hear. Yeah, so it sounds like it's all going well, right? Yep. It's really exciting. We're like a year and a half in. I'm like, yes, got my first junior software. Yes, I'm about to fight. And I think those two things, the next two things probably happened in like a week of each other. So I had my first unpadded like amateur fight. And it was going really, really great, right? I was doing really well. Like I was definitely up on points. Third round comes around. We fell down and I dislocated my shoulder. So fight was over. Lost. It's all it took. Oh God.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. It was a really, really bad dislocation.
Yeah.
We kind of both fell down on the mat at the same time and landed on my elbow, and my shoulder popped out backwards. So yeah, that was definitely, I couldn't do any training for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like I was in a shoulder immobilizer for 2 weeks. Couldn't do anything. It's devastating.
Especially when it's been such a big part of your life for such a long time, to kind of just be like, no, nothing at all for now.
Yeah, and I don't know, I was so angry. I was in a lot of pain from the injury, and I was just so angry. You know, I put so much effort in, and I got fit and everything, and didn't matter what I tried. I'd try, you know, like I would try to go for a run, it hurts too much. I would try to hit the bag, it hurts too much. You know, obviously can't spar or anything with that kind of injury. So yeah, it was pretty rough.
And then you're at the same time having to do your first role while injured. Or am I mixing?
Oh yeah, you'd think so, right? you'd think so, right? But my first role was a contract role, and it's kind of like part-time, so I was there just a couple of days a week.
Okay.
While I was still had my job at the restaurant as well for the rest of the time. And it was a startup, so you know, they didn't have huge amounts of like funding and time and stuff. It was literally just me and the CTO. And they probably about the same time they decided, yeah, we don't have the capacity for you. So boom, back to the restaurant. And I'm crippled.
All it took was just that 1 week. It's so annoying to hear, isn't it? Where it's just like, are you kidding me? There was so much going right, and then this.
Yeah, it definitely took a bit of a blow at that stage. And I guess a lot of people would give up at that point, right?
Yeah. Me not going to the gym because it was kind of not there, so I just stopped completely. Like, I get it. I 100% would not have gone back.
But well, yeah, but I really didn't want to just have a whole life in hospitality. It just was not for me. And so the only choice really is that I keep going, right? If I give up there, then what have I got?
Yeah.
So I just kept going, and like I said, I'd been doing the operations in this restaurant, and we'd been working on we'd been working with this online reservation system, and it was just giving me a hard time. And I was like, you know what? I could do something so much better. I'm going to go build an online reservation system. So I think I kind of just I was like, okay, I can't train. I'll just throw myself into software, and I'll get a better job. I'll go build something myself, whatever it takes. And so I had this project, this idea for an online reservation system. And that's when I started using Ruby on Rails. So Rails was really easy to kind of get started with. But obviously I'm still pretty naive to how software works in general. And Tom actually ended up introducing me to another friend of his, who was really interested in software and had a lot of side projects on the go, and he was into doing stuff. And so we got together and he helped me. I told him what my plan was for this reservation system, and we just spend a couple of hours every other weekend talking about things. He showed me all these gems and libraries. He went, what you've done there, that's a bit shit, don't do it like that, do it like this instead. And so then I'd go spend weeks trying to figure it out. And yeah, I was like, you know what, this reservation system is going to be amazing. And I probably spent a few months working on it, and it was actually really good, having a project that I'm interested in, that I've come up with, that I'm kind of semi-passionate about. It drove me to actually learn more and eventually get to the point where I was like, well, it's all well and good, but what I really need to do is get some real life, real world experience and then come back to this later.
Yeah.
So I really need to get a job. And this guy who'd been helping me out, he was quite good because he worked for a big company and he was quite high up as a manager in that company. And so he kind of gave me a lot of tips with my CV, which was great because he said, like, I look at CVs all the time. What you need to do is your CV needs to stand out from everyone else's. And he gave me some tips how to do that. Tell people, how do you rate your skills? Tell people what projects you've been working on. Give them something that they want to talk to you about. And so by that stage, I had a blog, I had my reservation system, and I probably had something else. I don't know what.
I mean, you're definitely working on a bunch of things at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Just trying really hard to upskill. And he said the other thing as well, you don't have a degree, right? But what would be really useful right now is if you were AWS certified, because everyone's in the cloud now. And so I was like, okay, yeah. Why don't I go and do that then? That sounds straightforward. That's way easier than studying for a going to uni or anything like that. I'll go to study and be AWS certified. So I put all of that on my CV, that I'm planning to do this and I have these projects and everything else. And I think at that point I would have sent my CV out to 131 companies in Melbourne, in Wellington.
Yeah.
Pleading and begging and being, well, not begging, but pleading my case, being like, well, look, I'm a junior software engineer. I really, really want to do this. I'm super passionate. Please give me a chance, talk to me. And actually the response actually wasn't too bad. I did end up having quite a few interviews, quite a few second interviews even. Didn't quite make it past second interview, but I did get a lot of conversations going on, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Especially kind of coming up from like the whole, I think it's so hard trying to make sure that people who are so stuck in the whole, you get a degree and you get a job and uni will have taught you everything, which is so not true. And they just get so caught up in that they just don't consider the other ends of it. And it's just so hard to be like, please just listen though, just hold on a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, people were really interested by my story and they were really, keen to chat and see what I'm all about. But when push came to shove, it was just like, yeah, we just don't have the capacity. You're too junior.
Yeah.
And so that's, that can be kind of hard because everyone at some point is too junior. How do you get from being too junior to junior, just junior enough?
Yep.
But yeah, I think I did actually, sorry, I did get offered one job.
Yeah.
I turned it down because it was fully remote. It didn't sound like, it sounded like I'd just be on my own the whole time.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it would be terrible. So yeah, the one job that I got offered, I turned down.
But I mean, that is important, isn't it, though, in terms of like, especially when at the level of like you want and need the support to start and like you're going to want to be around people to kind of get it going and stuff. And it can be just so hard where we're like, oh my God, this could be it. Like if I just do this, it'll be enough to get to the next one. But it can be just so detrimental at times being in that position to like, oh yeah, no, fair play. Good on you for turning that one down.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think it's important to consider like what offer it is that's coming your way. Like, is it going to really help you get to where you want to be? Because I have heard loads of horror stories about, people who did come straight out of uni, had no idea what they were doing, got hired by some big company, and they were kind of, pushed off to the side or down in the basement or whatever, on their own on some system. And they just had a terrible time. And I think there are a lot of people who would have been great software engineers who ended up just pursuing something else.
Yeah.
Because they had such a terrible time. So definitely wanted to find something where they had the capacity, to help me as well.
Yeah. It's a two-way street. You're doing enough for them that the least we can have is just like, you can support me in being a better developer. I think we can manage that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's beneficial for them as well, right?
Yeah.
So, that's how it goes. But yeah, so by this point, what have I done? I've applied to all these companies, had a few interviews, I did actually get one other job offer around the same time. So the other job offer I got, this is where it all gets exciting again, because I'm like, everything's going to work out. So the other job offer that I got was it wasn't a reservation system. It was an online ordering system. So it was like a hospitality related online ordering system. And obviously I had a lot of experience in hospitality. So I was like, yeah, cool. Went and talked to them, and they wanted to offer me something that was like, you do a little bit of customer service, like hospitality kind of thing, and then you do a little bit of development, and then over time we gradually, cut out the customer service and you end up being a full-time developer. And I'm sitting there thinking like, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
Why would I not take this? This is amazing. And I went through the whole interview process with them and everything. And it was great. And it went, right up to the Friday. And they said, yeah, we'll send you I remember being being a weekend. They said, we'll send you the offer in writing, because apparently it's really important to ask for the offer in writing before you actually quit your previous job. Anyone who's watching, make sure you get the offer in writing. So they said, yeah, we'll send you an offer. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is exciting. This is awesome. This is great. And by that stage, I'd been studying really hard for this AWS certificate to be a certified developer. And, the AWS certifications, like one reason, a lot of people look at these online certifications and they go, well, yeah, they're a bit of a joke. They're a bit of a waste of time. But, one reason that this one was kind of a big deal was because it's a proctored exam. So you go into a testing center, it's not, in the comfort of your own home. There's no way you can cheat.
Yeah.
You're using the testing facilities machines. And so, yeah, I'd studied for that and had that lined up as well, like all booked in, ready to go. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is great. I've got this job offer coming. I've lined up my certification. And here we are, this must be 6 months after my previous injury and fighting.
Yeah.
The only way to rehabilitate from injuries really is to go to machines and get into the weights gym. So I've been lifting a lot of weight, finally got back into kickboxing, and lined up another fight as well. This was a local fight in Wellington. So I'm like, yeah, okay, this month everything's on, got everything lined up, good to go. This is my break, I'm conscious we're an hour in and you think we're at the end of the story, but we're not.
No, not at all. And I'm like, oh my God, this is another like a turn coming here. And I'm like prepping myself for this.
Yeah, so I think the first blow, was the job offer didn't come through. It came to Monday and I was like, this is really weird. And my boss at the restaurant, like I'd worked for this guy for 7 years, and he really supported me in everything. And he was really, really keen for me, didn't want me to leave, but he was really keen for me to go and pursue my career. And so he came in on the Monday and I was pretty upset. He goes, what's wrong? And I said, well, these guys said they'd give me a job offer by Friday, and it's Monday and that still hasn't happened. And we both knew someone who worked at that company. So he called the guy at the company, actually. He said, what the hell's going on? And the guy said, well, it's not my decision, but they decided, that they're not going to make the offer. And we're like, why? And we couldn't really get any good answers. They didn't actually come back to me and say, yeah, we're not going to give you the offer now. Or maybe they did. And that's why I was upset. I think maybe they did come back to me and say, yeah, look, we've changed our mind. We couldn't figure out why. But obviously you could kind of imagine that someone said, yeah, you've got a job. And then they've turned around and said, yeah, no, actually, you don't. Yeah, I was absolutely devastated.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so grim to hear.
Applied to 131 companies. I had so many interviews. I turned down this other job. And yeah, it just blew up in my face. And I was like, well, it's really shit. Thankfully, I still had a lot of friends and support and my mentor around me at the time as well. I think, probably I went out and got really drunk for like 2 days and cried and stuff and everything else. And at the end of it all, kind of, I suppose, snapped out of it like you do after a few days. You're like, okay, well, that's it.
Yeah.
And one good thing is that I had these 2 other things lined up. So I had this fight and this certification lined up. So I go, okay, cool. At least I've got something else to be looking forward to and working on. So I think next was the fight. And it was my first fight back after 6 months, after a really bad injury. And I didn't dislocate my shoulder again.
Oh, the stress of that. I was like, oh no, what's the next injury?
But yeah, I lost on points. And yeah, again, it's like, it's not a huge deal. Like, it's just an amateur fight. Like, who really gives a crap?
Yeah.
But at the time, it's just taken up so much of my life, and it's so much of me, and this is meant to be my comeback. Yeah, I lost the fight. So yeah, that was pretty sucky. But the positive of that is that I didn't have an injury. And so now let's just focus for the next 2 weeks. We're getting the certificate, and it's going to change everything. Yeah, so that fight that I lost, it was a split decision. So that means that one of the judges just scored her 1 point above me. So it was literally 1 point that I lost by. So then, yeah, this exam 2 weeks later, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to go. I've done all these practice exams. I used a cloud guru. I've been studying this for months. I'm good to go. So I go in there, and I think 70% maybe is the pass rate, something like that. And they tell you straight away at the end if you pass or fail. I think I got 69%.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the things, like I remember the first I think it was a Microsoft cert that I sat for. It's exactly the same. I think I lost it by like, they do like point system or something that you have to hit 700. I was on like 695, and I was like, how? Like, why? Oh God, that is, yeah, that's so grim. Like, it's just so irritating. It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, so wow, that's unbelievable. That's my month of just everything falls apart, right?
Yeah.
So that's another big blow, and that's like, that's 6 months after the first big blow. So I don't know how you meant to come back from that either. You kind of shit.
Yeah.
Now what? Like, I've really given this my all, like, twice. I suppose maybe, I don't know if you're listening to this, but you might be thinking like, maybe you're doing too much. Maybe you should just focus on one thing at a time. But it's not like that. It really isn't. You kind of have to balance things up and have lots of things going on. Not lots, but maybe at least 2. Yeah. So I wasn't like, killing myself on these 2 things and doing them half-assed. Like, it just sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Ultimately, I don't think luck has anything to do with it, but yeah. But yeah, so that was that. Yeah, so after all that was really, really devastating. And I remember it being, that must have been, what year are we now? 2021. That must have been 2016 or 17. And I remember it being right at the start of the year. So it was like January, February kind of time. And obviously I kind of just went back to whatever. I just went back to training, working on my side projects, and working at the restaurant. And so, yeah, we're probably a couple of years in now where my day basically looks like, 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. in the restaurant, 6 till 8 training at the gym, and then 8 till 2 a.m. working on projects, basically every day, I think. And I went back to studying for the AWS certificate because I was like, it's really, really a bit of a blow here, but now I kind of know what I'm in for. So let me just try again. Some of these people that I'd talked to had kind of emphasized the fact that, you have a much better shot of your CV sticking out if you know something about AWS. Like, that's instantly transferable skills. That's things that companies need now.
Yeah. And
so I went back to studying that, and that year in May, I went and sat the exam again, and I passed. I don't remember the score. I just remember that I passed.
Yeah, that's all that matters, really.
yeah, exactly. So obviously that was like a huge relief. I was like, holy shit, I was so proud of myself. I think I walked out of the testing center. I straight away called Tom and I was like, hey, I passed. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the AWS exam, I passed. We went out and we celebrated, and yeah, it was great. And I think also probably within, a couple of hours, I was so excited. I jumped online, went to all my profiles, Seek and LinkedIn and Indeed and everything, and updated it to be like, yes, AWS certified, boom, motherfuckers, yep. Got it. So excited. And you know what, it was really like the icing on the cake. I got an email the next morning, and just out of nowhere, this guy from a company in Auckland said, hey, saw your CV, saw your job profile on LinkedIn. Do you want to come and interview with us? And I'm like, what? Is this a joke? Like, I didn't apply to anywhere outside of Wellington. My thing isn't that good. You're asking me to come and apply with you, like interview with you? Like, holy shit. And I was like, well, I guess, there's a really like slim to none chance of me getting this job. So fuck it, let's go. So he goes, yeah, okay. He paid for the flights, sent me all the flight details, paid for the taxis and everything. And I'm thinking like, who does this guy think I am? I'm just like, okay, all right. So I go up there and sends a taxi to the airport, picks me up and everything. And we have a coffee, and, the coffee goes well. He doesn't really ask me anything technical. He just, tell me about you, tell me about your background and everything. Obviously, I'm like, yeah, I'm really junior. Like I'm super fresh and everything. So yeah, okay. And this is a Friday. And so then that company, Hemisphere Interactive in Auckland, they kind of go for lunch every Friday at the pub, a couple of beers and stuff. Small company. So they invite me out to lunch with them. I'm like, okay, cool. So yeah, we have lunch and I chat with the developers, and it's kind of cool and everything. And then, developers go back to work after lunch, and it's just me and the boss. And it goes, all right, so let's cut to the chase. What's it going to take for you to come and join us? Come and work with us. And I'm just, in the back of my mind, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is this a dream? And so I tell him a number, and I'm thinking, that's way more than he's going to pay me. And he tells me a number, and I go, and I stick to my original number. And in the end, he goes, yep, okay, we'll pay you what you want. And I'm like, okay. And I shake his hand and everything. And he puts me in a taxi and sends me back to the airport. And I'm just, this whole time, I'm like, this is not real. Like, it's so surreal, And by the time I get home, I have the offer in writing. At which stage,
it's not like the last time. I love this.
I'm just like, holy shit. And he even, offers to pay for the relocation for me to move to Auckland to go work with them. And I'm just like, what the? And I talked to my friend, Tom, my mentor. He's actually a really good friend. Like, we're still very good friends. I talked to him and I go, I should have asked for more money.
Yep.
And I guess, you know, he's always said to me, whatever you know, always ask for 20% more than what you think you're worth.
Yeah.
And I just didn't believe him. I was just like, nah, there's no way anyone would give me a job if I asked for that much. And yeah, I was just like, yeah, I should have asked for more. And he goes, yeah. But yeah, obviously I'm just like, holy shit, this is amazing. So all it took was, I'm guessing, like, I updated my whatever profile, and it just maybe came to the top of the feed to be like new changes or new updates or something. But yeah, this guy Glenn, who owns Hemisphere Interactive New Zealand, he's an interesting guy. Like, he's really just, he had a bad experience when he first started working in software, and he kind of has this mentality of like, I hate the thought of other people having that bad experience as well. And so I kind of want to give somebody an opportunity, but give them a good experience too, you know, where they can kind of have a good time and learn and everything.
Yeah.
Him and his wife are like really lovely people. They're you know, they're involved in a lot of charities and giving back. So they were great to work with. But yeah, so flew up to Auckland. Well, you know, sent my stuff and then sent myself up to Auckland.
Yep.
And that was kind of good timing for me actually as well, because the gym I'd been training at in Wellington Jai, they'd just opened up a branch in Auckland.
It's meant to be.
Yeah. And I ended up finding an apartment right across the road from the gym. And it was probably, you know, like a 10-minute drive from work. So it was really very convenient. And I think by that stage, I got matched up for another fight in Wellington on one of Wellington's bigger shows. And I fought this girl from the South Island, Caitlyn Tucker. And it was a battle, like it was an epic fight. Again, this is another show. They flew me down, they pay for everything, you know, and I'm just like, whoa, superstar life.
This is what we dream of. Like, I love this.
Caitlyn Tucker is actually currently the New Zealand champion. So she's kind of a big name over there. But yeah, this was early on for both of us, and it was a bit of a clinch war. So I don't know if you know anything about Muay Thai, but there's an aspect of clinching, and it's very technical. And in the end, I took out the win, unanimous win. No disputes on that. And that was awesome. Like, that was a great feeling, you know. I'm like, holy shit, this is me. Like, I'm ticking all the boxes here, you know. I got my certificate, I got my job, I got my win, I got everything. So yeah, it's super exciting.
I love how it's from like everything is lining up to be ready and going to like, okay, no, it's actually working and everything is happening and this is it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's definitely surprising how when you look back, everything kind of lines up at the same time, and then everything falls down at the same time, or everything works out at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And I've noticed that since I've been in IT as well, you know, since I got my job, definitely, yeah, I mean, after that, obviously I came over to Melbourne and things have changed since then. This year actually is when I was promoted to head of delivery at Fresho, and this year is also the year a few months beforehand that I took out the Victorian state title. So everything kind of always seems to be lining up at the same time, which is why I think, I don't know, my journey is so interesting, because it all comes together and then it all falls apart. And it all comes together and then it all falls apart. But yeah, so I mean that was it. That was kind of how I got from high school to actually working in software.
Oh, and I think it's been such a great chat. I think, I've probably like not said much at all because I was just like, it was riveting, and you're like building it up and you're like, well, this is happening. I'm like, oh no, is this going to be like the time it works out? Is this not? Like, it was just so good to hear it. And I think I'm like, it's good. I mean, I'm glad that you talked about it because it's so great to hear kind of the other aspects of it, right? And it's like, we're so used to kind of hearing, yep, we did it, we got there in the end, without hearing the downfalls in the middle. So it's really, really good that you shared that.
Yeah, definitely. I hope that some of the listeners are, you know, they can be reassured that no one has an easy ride. Nobody just walks through the park and just goes la-di-da, picks up some daisies and hey, I'm a software engineer. I think everyone definitely has downfalls, and it's just how you respond to those downfalls. You know, are you going to give up because you took the wrong path? You know, you got a little bit sidetracked, or are you going to just try again? That's really what it comes back to. And the other thing too is the support network. I think is hugely important, to have the right people around you. Like when I was working at Minibar, I was basically surrounded 24/7 with toxic people, like just, you know, drunk people, high people.
Yeah.
Some of the people I work with were lovely, but don't get me wrong, but most of the people around me were just, you know, toxic and just horrible to be with. And as soon as I stopped doing that, like I said, I didn't really want to interact with anyone. But I did find in the end some really good mentors and some really good friends. And they supported me nonstop the whole way. And to, you know, to the point that initially I was kind of embarrassed or afraid to say what I really want to be doing. But, you know, in the end, like my later days in Wellington, I would go to parties and go and tell everyone I want to be a software engineer. And I'd find myself like in the corner with this guy bailed up against the wall, telling him why I want to be a software engineer because he's the only other software engineer at this party. And, you know, it's that talking, in that having the confidence to talk about what you want to do. That's where opportunities can be created. Because none of it, you know, I didn't get lucky. I created opportunities for myself by talking to people about what I want to do and having a little bit of faith sometimes as well. Because, you know, you might think I got lucky, but definitely
no, not at all. And I think, I mean, I was going to say this, where it's like, on paper, if you just looked at kind of the progression of like, this happened, right? And it's like, oh, you fell into it because you got this person call. I'm like, no, again, this is why I like talking about like journeys like this, where it's like, you get to see the years of effort to line things up to a level of like, and I did the cert and literally everything worked itself out because you lined up everything to get to that place. And that's not luck, that's just effort and like making yourself go through constant like checks and testing and all these kind of different parts of it.
Yeah, well, equally, I'm just not a big fan of saying, you know, I got lucky.
Yeah,
I did not get lucky. There might have been a little bit of luck, but it was a lot of opportunity creation.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the way to go. And I think communities make such a difference, and which is also why I'm very excited. So Selena's joined us at Women Who Code in Melbourne. So I'm very excited for all the things that we can create and everything that's going to come up in the next couple of months. But thank you so much for spending your afternoon chatting to me and telling me all about everything that's happened. It's so good to hear it.
Well, thank you. It's been really good talking.
Oh, I'm sad.
I feel like a weight off my chest.
I like it. I'm sure. I mean, like, there's no way someone listening to it doesn't have something to take away from this conversation, whatever else it might be. So I'm very glad that we had this. I will leave you go with your day, and I'm sure in the next whatever many time left, at some stage there will be a path continued here, and we'll hear more about exactly what you've been up to, because there's going to be so much more to come yet. Like, we know that. Whether that's the Australian title, like, I mean, that would be fun to hear about.
It would be fun to hear about.
Exactly.
Well,
but look,
never say never. There are some things in the pipeline. We'll see what goes.
Oh, I love that. I like hearing that. And that's a great way to wrap this up. Look, we'll leave it there for today. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time with another episode. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and thank you for listening.